So the goal for today's class is a very, very important class for the entire out of the entire training, one of the most important topics. And today I'm going to talk about software engineering processes. So I'm sharing my screen, making sure that all of you can see my screen. So today we are going to learn about software engineering processes. Now, when we talk about software engineering processes, there are three main processes. The first one is known as waterfall methodology. Second one is known as rational unified process, also referred as RUP. And the third one is known as Agile Scrum. So these are the three most used software engineering processes at work that we are going to talk about. All right, so I want to make sure you all make a note of this, and then I'll start explaining you first what software engineering process means. Imran, if you can please keep yourself on mute. All right. So first we'll start off with the definition of software engineering process. So the definition is software engineering processes software engineering processes are different ways of implementing SDLC. I'm going to repeat again. Software engineering processes are different ways of implementing SDLC. So what this means is at the end of the day, we always we always follow SDLC. I mean, if you work on an IT project, you have to follow SDLC, period. However, the way I approach SDLC changes based on what process I use. Am I using a waterfall approach? Am I using an RUP approach? Or am I using an Agile Scrum approach? So again, these are three different ways I can implement my SDLC. Any questions? All right. Now, everything started off with a waterfall approach. Initially, this was the only approach to SDLC. Everyone started using waterfall, and then once you start using something, you tend to realize this is good about this process, this is not so good about this process. And people started identifying some shortcomings of waterfall method, which led to the creation of RUP, Rational Unified Process. Again, people started, some companies would use waterfall, some companies would use RUP. And the ones that started using RUP, they started enjoying some aspects of RUP. At the same time, they started identifying some shortcomings of RUP. And that led to the creation of Agile. And Agile is the most widely used approach in today's world. I would say 6 to 7 companies out of 10 would end up using Agile. And I'll explain you the reasons, the benefits, and then you'll realize yourself and understand why are most of the companies leaning towards Agile Scrum. Now, before we go and understand each of these methods, I want you to take few minutes and write this down. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using the same project that we have been talking during this training, online banking. And this is the scope of your project. So your online banking has 3 modules: accounts management, funds management, checks management. And these are the functions under each module that needs to be done. So I want you to write this down, and then I'm going to help you understand how do I implement this project via a waterfall approach, via RUP approach, and via an agile approach, so that you are able to understand the differences between the three. So I'll give you probably 3 to 4 minutes. Let's write this down, and then I'll move on with the first approach. Can you please mute yourself?
Yeah, because I was not able to hear you at all. Did you not talking at all?
No, I am giving you 2 3 minutes to write this down.
Oh, okay, okay. I was not sure. Like, yeah.
All right. So I think all of you got enough time to write this down. So we'll first start with a waterfall approach. So question to you, you can unmute yourself and answer me this. If you hear the word waterfall and if you imagine waterfall, what is one characteristic of a waterfall? What is the basic characteristic of
One
waterfall?
way. One way.
One way. Perfect. So when you imagine a waterfall, right, it goes from top to bottom, and that's something which is true. And this is exactly the concept why we call it waterfall in the SDLC process, software engineering process. So if I'm doing a waterfall approach to SDLC, so if I write down what are the steps of my SDLC here, so my SDLC steps are I do requirements gathering. My next step is analysis, design, implementation, testing, deployment. So these are the steps for. So what waterfall method says that is once you finish your requirements gathering and analysis, if the waterfall says that requirements gathering and analysis are two separate phases, ideally at work, they both happen in parallel. So once we gather our requirements and once we document our requirements, the next thing is we move on to the design phase. Now, the important thing in waterfall is that once you go to the design phase, going back to any of the previous stages is not permitted. You cannot go back to the previous stage. After the design phase, you go to the implementation phase. So while you are coding, you just cannot go back to any of the previous stages. Once you are done coding, you do testing. While you are testing, you do not take a U-turn and you do not go back to the previous stages. And then your deployment. So in other words, a waterfall approach is a unidirectional approach to SDLC. There are no U-turns allowed. U-turns are not allowed. So let's write down the definition of waterfall. Waterfall approach is a unidirectional approach to SDLC. This approach does not allow going back and making changes to any of the previously completed to any of the previously completed stage of the SDLC cycle. All right. So let us assume that I am planning to implement this online banking project via a waterfall approach. So the first phase for me is requirements gathering and analysis. I want to gather and document my requirements. So when I'm doing so, I'm going to be gathering requirements and I'm going to be documenting the requirements for all the three modules at the same time. So I'm going to have chat sessions with SMEs of accounts management, funds management, checks management. I'll gather all the requirements for all the different functions that was outlined in my BRD. I'll gather my detailed requirements. I'll create my requirements document. May it be FRD, may it be a use case. I'll take a sign off on the requirements. So I'm done with requirements gathering and analysis. Once I'm done with that, the system architect is going to design the entire online banking system. And then the developers are going to write the code for all the three modules together. And then the testers will test everything at the same time. And I'm going to deploy, or I'll have a release. And in that release, I'm going to deploy everything in one single release. So if I'm taking a waterfall approach, I am only going to have one release for this project. And let's say it took me 12 months to deliver this project. Now, just a disclaimer, any time estimate that I'm giving may not be realistic. I'm only giving you a ballpark number for you to understand the concept. So don't try running calculations as to why 12 months and not 18 months or 9 months. So this is a waterfall approach where I go in a unidirectional approach. Now, the problem in waterfall is that once I'm in the design phase or implementation phase or testing phase, and if the previous things needs to be changed, it is not allowed. So this also tells me the biggest disadvantage of waterfall is I'm not able to make changes if I have to. And that's a major disadvantage of waterfall. But this disadvantage also brings in a very important advantage of waterfall. Can anyone tell me what that advantage could be? All right, no one's in a mood to talk. So if I'm not making any changes to anything, so what that means is if there are no unanticipated changes, in most cases, the project is going to go in the right direction in terms of the time frame and in terms of the budget. So when I'm doing a waterfall approach, in most cases and not, my project will always be completed in the given time frame and within the given budget. So that is a biggest advantage of a waterfall approach, that the project tends to complete within the proposed time frames, as well as if the time remains the same, the budget does not change and it also gets completed in the right budget. So let's write down this advantage of waterfall. And number one, project follows the project plan timelines, and hence project follows the project plan timeline, and hence gets completed within the defined time and budget. Let's write down waterfall disadvantage. And I want to leave some open spaces on the disadvantage because I'm going to add some points further to this when I teach you RUP. So we'll go back and add some more points to the disadvantage of waterfall. So the first disadvantage is waterfall is a unidirectional approach and does not allow any changes in the requirements once the requirements document has been signed off. All right. So that's waterfall for now. I'm going to talk about RUP and then we'll revisit waterfall once again. So let's write down the definition of RUP. Rational Unified Process Rational Unified Process is an iterative. I have it written here on the screen. It's an iterative approach to STLC. All right, so what does the word iterative mean? Anyone?
Repeating a word.
Sorry?
Repeating a word.
Iterative is repetitions,
Yeah.
right? So you want to have repetitions. So what waterfall does is waterfall does not have iterations. It delivers everything in one release, all the modules in one release. RUP says, you know what? Let's do this a little bit differently. RUP says, I'm not going to deliver the entire project in one release. Instead, I'm going to have multiple releases or multiple iterations. So in my first iteration or in my first release, I'm going to be delivering accounts management. In my second release, I'm going to deliver funds management. In my third iteration or in my third release, I will deliver checks management. So that's what RUP says. I'm going to be doing it in multiple iterations. So let us understand how this works. So in my first release, I am going to deliver only accounts management module. And let's say it took me 6 months to deliver this. So what happens then is when I'm working on my first release and I am in my requirements gathering phase, I'm only going to be gathering requirements for the module accounts management because that's the scope of my first release. I really don't care about funds management or checks management or any such thing. I'm only going to be gathering requirements for accounts management. So let me show this in a different way. So I'm going to write requirements, and one refers to my first release. Okay. So once I've gathered my requirements for my first release, what am I doing next? The next thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be analyzing the requirements for my first release. After that, I'm going to be designing the requirements for my first release. After that, I'm going to implement the requirements for my first release. I'm doing the SDLC. After that, I'm going to be testing the requirements for my first release. And after that, I am going to deploy my first release. Now, I want to make sure that you understand that as we go from this is your time axis from top to down. This is your time. So in order for me to come from here to here, how much time did it take me? It took me 6 months for my first release. Now going back to waterfall. Let's say I'm in the design phase of my waterfall. And if SME comes back to me and SME says that I want to make some changes in the requirements, what is your answer?
You can't do it.
You cannot do it, right? So you explain them the limitations of the approach, you say, and you tell them that once the requirements have been signed off, ideally no changes are permitted, and it's not going to we won't be able to entertain those changes. Now, let's say you are in the design phase of your RUP of your first release. And if SME comes back to you and they say that I want to make some changes to the requirements, any idea what are you going to tell them? Would you say yes? Would you say no? Would you say I don't know? What do you think you'll say? You say yes. Well, so in RUP as well, you don't always just say yes blindly because you are in the design phase and the requirements for that release has been signed off. So, but you don't tell them no either. In RUP, there is a process which is known as a requirements change process. So once the requirements have been signed off for that release, and if they make a change in that requirement, you have to go through an approval process before you tell them a yes or before you tell them a no. So let us see what is this process. I'm going to make you write this. I first want you to just understand what it is, and then I'll explain you how to go about that. So let's say your SME comes back. So let me open up a requirements document. So I'm opening up the document that we have worked on previously. Okay. So now let's say the SMEs comes back to me and they say that they want to make some changes over here, and where it says online banking, they want to add a flashing, they want to also add new to this online banking, just so that they understand that this is a new feature that has been developed. Now, I'm just taking a very simple example, all right? I mean, it could be much more complex than that. So what you do then is you tell the SMEs, all right, let me do this. Let me first update my requirements document and let me send it to the change control board. Now, who's the change control board? Change control board comprises, it's a body, it's a group that comprises of a senior member from the following groups, right? So it consists of a system architect, it consists of a senior QA, a senior developer, a DBA, a project manager. So these are all the different team members that are going to work on your requirements. So basically, you'll tell them that let me make an update in my requirements document of what you're proposing. I'm going to send this updated requirements document to the change control board. The change control board is going to do a review on this requirement, and then they'll come back with estimate whether can they do this in this release, can they do this in upcoming release, whether they cannot do this, it's impossible for them to do. So that's a process. Now, what do you do as a BA is, in your Word document, there is always an option of track changes. So if you turn that on, what it does is any change that you make after that, it's going to highlight it differently, something like this. And then you'll say add new tag to online banking hyperlink. And then in the description, you'll say system shall display a flashing tag called new next above the online banking hyperlink. I want to add one more requirement. Time period for new tag. From the date of implementation, system shall display, the system shall, how can I word this? I'm looking for system. I'll start with system shall display the new flashing tag for a period of 180 calendar for a period of 180 calendar days from the date it went live in production. So these are the two new requirements that you are adding. So when you send this requirements document to the change control board, they exactly know what you are adding or what you are deleting based on this. So the reason you do this is it makes their life easy to understand what are the changes that you are proposing in the document, because they don't know, right, what could have changed. So this really helps. You need to track changes turn on track changes to display this. Any questions? All right. So with respect to this, a question that could be asked is, let's write on the question. How do you manage requirements change? How do you manage? How do you manage requirements change? All right. So let's write down the answer. In the event of a change in a requirement, in the event of a change in the requirement after the requirements have been signed off, in the event of a change in a requirement after the requirements have been signed off, I would update my requirements document with the proposed changes. Well, let's rephrase this, okay? Sorry about this. So I'll start from the beginning. In the event of a change in a requirement after the requirements have been signed off, I would I would I would turn on track changes. I would turn on track changes in my requirements document. I would turn on track changes in my requirements document, comma, update my requirements document, update my requirements document with the proposed changes and send it across and send it across to the change control board. In parentheses, I want you to write down what a change control board comprises of. So we'll say, in parentheses, we'll write a change control board comprises of a project manager, a system architect, and one senior representative from each of the following team. Development team, DBA team, QA team. We can close the parentheses. The change control board reviews the proposed requirement change to ensure that it is technically feasible to implement, and comes and responds back with estimates and responds back with estimates in terms of time and budget. For implementing the proposed change. Project manager then reviews the estimates with the business. Project manager then reviews these estimates with the business, who then who then confirms if they want who then confirms if they want to implement who then confirms if they want to implement this change as a part of this release or as an enhancement to a future release. So that's the complete answer. So the last sentence that I made you write, who then identifies if they want to implement the change as a part of this release or as an enhancement to a future release. Anyone understands what that means?
It means could either change this particular piece or let this be and that update to the next one.
Perfect. So I'll give you an example, right? So when the change control board, they review this change, they come back with an estimate. They say, well, we currently are midway in the design phase. And if you want to make this change in this release, it's going to take me 4 more weeks to do this. And it's going to cost XYZ dollars to implement this. So the current deadline, rather than 6 months, will now have 7 months for the first release. That's one option. Or the other option is that we don't make any changes in the first release, we let it go as it is. And then when we are working on funds management, and since we have time in that, we'll be able to squeeze in this change without any additional cost or money because we have enough time and we can plan it accordingly to squeeze in this change without any additional delays or extra budget. So then it depends on the SMEs, on the business, as to how badly they want this change. And then they'll come up back with an update saying, you know what, I need this irrespective in this release, or we'll do it next release. That's what it means. So this is so you worked on the first release, it took you of accounts management, and it took you 6 months. Then going back to where we were, I'm going to change color so you can see some differences. Now I'm working on R2. So my second release cycle begins. So I'm gathering my requirements for the second release. Then I am analyzing the requirements for my second release. I'm then designing my second release. I'm then implementing my second release. testing my second release. Deploying my second release. So this is my second release. So if I go back to the Excel version, what am I doing in my second release? In my second release, what am I delivering? I'm delivering funds management. Plus, am I delivering anything else in my second release? Anyone? Am I delivering anything else in my second release?
No. No.
Sorry, I couldn't understand anything. All right, so what am I delivering is I'm delivering funds management plus changes, if any, in accounts management. And let's say this took me 8 months to deliver. And now I start working on my third release. So I start gathering requirements for my third release. Once the requirements are gathered, I analyze my third release. I design my third release. I am implementing my third release. I am testing my third release. And I am deploying my third release. So going back to the Excel version, I can say that in my third release, I am going to deploy checks management plus changes, if any, in accounts management plus funds management. And let's say it took me another 8 months to deliver this. So altogether, this process took me 22 months versus 12 months in Waterfall. So this is an iterative approach. Now, if you see this, the way this cycle is, what I'm drawing here is one iteration. This is my second iteration. This is my third iteration. So if you see the pattern here, I'm changing the color here so you can see the pattern that I'm talking about. If you see this pattern, it looks like this. So RUP is also referred as a spiral approach to STLC. So you may just want to write this down. You can say that RUP is also referred as a spiral approach to STLC. All right. So what are some advantages? What are some disadvantages of RUP? Anyone? All right. So let's write down the first advantage.
I was gonna say
Yes.
an advantage would be that you make changes.
And that is the biggest advantage, right? So let's write down the first advantage. RUP is flexible RUP is flexible and incorporates the proposed requirement changes by the SMEs. So that's point number one. Point number two. You see here, everyone is working simultaneously. So it's not only one team. So for example, if here the developers are working on the first release, the system architect is working on the second release, the BA is working on the third release. So it has a better resource utilization versus what happens in Waterfall is only one team works in one phase because it's just one release. So you can write down the second advantage is because of the iterative nature, because of the iterative nature, RUP offers RUP offers maximum resource utilization. Then another thing is at the end of each release, SME gets to see the app, that particular functionality, they get to test it and they get to play with it. And when they use it, and if they don't like something, if they don't like something that they see, they would get a chance to update it in the upcoming release. So that's again a major advantage. So the next advantage is, let's write down, SMEs can use the application at the end of each release. SMEs can use the application at the end of each release
Sorry, hello, sir. I stopped because of irritation. I about maximum utilization.
I did not understood what you meant to say.
I stopped because of the irritation. How you offers maximum utilization. That's why I stopped.
For some reason, Jumbo, your voice is not coming across well. It's difficult for me to comprehend what you're trying to say.
Okay. The first advantage is why I stopped. RUP is flexible. If
Yes,
propose requirement change is
right. The
okay.
second advantage is SMEs can see the the second advantage is it offers maximum resource utilization that we talked here, right? And the third advantage now is SMEs can see the application at the end of each release. So I meant SMEs can use the application at the end of each release and hence can suggest enhancements, if any, in the upcoming releases. All right, so that's RUP. Now, once we understand what RUP is, we can go back and revisit the disadvantages of Waterfall now, which will be more glorified once we understand what RUP offers. So we wrote the first disadvantage that it is not flexible and it does not incorporate changes to the requirements. The second disadvantage is because of the unidirectional nature of Waterfall, only one team because of unidirectional nature of Waterfall, only one team can work in a phase and does not offer maximum and does not offer maximum resource utilization. And the third disadvantage is SMEs can see the application at the end of the release and do not have any future releases and do not have any future releases that can implement the suggested enhancements, if any. All right, so any questions in Waterfall or RUP? All right. So let us also understand the transition from Waterfall to RUP. So everything started off with a Waterfall approach. The business started using Waterfall, and then they started getting a little bit disappointed, getting a little bit frustrated because it was not flexible. So they say that if I need to make a change, it does not incorporate a change and it takes forever. It's difficult, it's just not flexible. So then they invented RUP. The biggest shortcoming of Waterfall was that it does not incorporate the requirements change, and they came up with RUP approach. Now what RUP does is RUP does incorporate the changing requirement. But then now the business started realizing that although it's delivering me the changes, it takes about 6 months to 8 months before they deliver me what I want. So again, now business started thinking that this is not something that I want. And at times, we need changes sooner than 6 months, and we just don't have the patience to wait for 6 months because we lose the competitive advantage. So let's say if a store, or let's say if Walmart started doing a curbside pickup, and Giant, who's a competitor of Walmart, wants to do that, and it takes them 6 months to make those changes, it just does not serve the purpose. So then they started pushing for a better approach which could help them overcome the shortcoming of RUP. And that led to the evolution of Agile. So what Agile says, you know what? We are here to deliver what you want, and we are here to deliver you in a shorter period. So Agile says, you know what? Rather than doing 6 months or 8 months in a release, we'll deliver something every month. So Agile is a process where you're reducing the period you take to deliver the changes that the business wants. And this could be as short as a month, or sometimes even shorter than a month. But for learning purposes, we'll assume that it's a month. So let's say if I'm doing this, so now before I go into details of Agile, my question is, I want you to understand this. In Waterfall, we took 12 months. And when I'm doing 12 months, my delivery of my delivery is at the entire project. I'm taking a longer time, and hence I'm delivering the entire project. Now I'm trying to reduce my time frame of delivery. From 12 months, I'm going to 6 months. So what you want to understand is that in 6 months, I cannot deliver the entire project. Hence, I'm only promising to deliver one module at a time. Now, I'm trying to reduce again my delivery time, and this time it's 1 month. So can I even deliver a module in a month? I cannot. So in Agile, my delivery is at a feature level. I can only deliver independent features in Agile in a month's period. So in Waterfall, my delivery is at a project level. When I do a release, I deliver the entire project. In RUP, my delivery is at a module level. And in Agile, my delivery is at a feature level. So let's say in my first release, which is a month, I'm delivering new user registration and I'm delivering login. In my second month, I'll deliver edit profile plus view balance. In my third month, I'll deliver add a bill plus pay a bill. I'm just giving you these random examples. Don't try rationalizing that with actual time frames. You just want to understand the concepts. So that is Agile. Now you want to understand that Agile, if you're doing Agile for a brand new system and you're doing a release at the end of first month and you're delivering new user registration and login, what good it is? It's of no good. What will a customer do registering and logging in? But once they log in, they have nothing else to do. So if you're using Agile for a brand new system, you will do releases on a monthly basis, but for the first 5 to 6 months, you're not going to go live in the production. You're not going to go live in the real production environment. You'll do internal releases, but not go live in production. Once you have 5 to 6 releases, which means you have a good set of features, you go live and you let the customers know that we are live and you can start using online banking. And then every month you keep adding new features and they love it. I hope this makes sense. Agile is most suited for what kind of projects? Anyone? There are 3 different types, right? You can do a new system, you can do system enhancements, you can do system reengineering. So Agile is most suited for system enhancements. You already have a system in place, and all you're doing is you're constantly adding new features to the system on a monthly basis. That's what Agile is most suited for. Any questions? All right, so if no questions, then I want to deep dive in Agile because this is the most important approach in today's world. And everybody everybody uses Agile. So let's understand some real details about Agile. Okay, so what I'm showing you here is a calendar. And for learning purposes, we just want to understand that every month that I am in it's a 28-day month. Just assume that for now. So I have a month which starts on the 1st of and then it ends on 28th. I have a monthly release as well. So when is my monthly release? My monthly release is going to be on 28th, the last day of the month. So I have a release on September 28th. I have a release on October 28th. I have a release on November 28th. Now, what I want to do is, let's assume that today is 11th of September. So my new release, my new release begins on the 2nd of each month and it ends on 28th of each month. Again, it starts on the 2nd of each month, ends on 28th of each month. Now let us assume that today is 11th September. I am in the middle of my release, which starts on 2nd, ends on 28th. What I want to do on this day is in the middle of each month is every month in the middle of this, I conduct a meeting which is known as business prioritization meeting. And I call in the SMEs in this meeting. What does the name suggest? What do you think is the goal of this meeting?
To focus on the important aspects.
To focus on the important aspects. Pretty close. That's the name. Prioritization meeting. But what kind of important aspects?
On what needs
What needs to be done first?
Sorry?
What needs to be done first?
What needs to be done first? Pretty good. We are going in the right direction. Next question. You said what needs to be done first. Now, what needs to be done first for which release? Anyone can answer that?
press release?
Sorry?
Initial release, the
Can you
first.
repeat? Which one? So you want to give the names, right? The names are, I have a release called September 28, October 28, November 28.
So it would be the new user registration login.
Then now forget new user registration, forget login. Talk about this project, right? So I have a release scheduled on September 28. I have a release scheduled on October 28. I have a release scheduled on November 28. I am meeting the SMEs in the business prioritization meeting on September 11th.
You'll go sequentially September 1st.
Sorry?
You'll go sequentially. September will come first.
Raj, for some reason, your connection is very bad. I'm unable to hear you at all properly.
You'll go sequentially. Can you hear me now?
A little bit better, but not great. It's coming across very muffled. Better. Go ahead.
So it'll go sequentially, like September 1st, and
No,
then
no. So first September 1st. My question is, you're meeting them on September 11th. And you
Right.
want to understand the priorities of the business. So my question is, if you're meeting them on September 11th, you want to understand the priorities of the business for which release. Will it be September 28, October 28, or November 28?
First was September 28th. That's what the first one is.
Okay. So now I'm not going to be asking them the priorities of September 28 because I'm already in the middle of this release. If I'm meeting them on September 11th, I'm going to ask them, what do you want to get delivered on October 28? So I want to work a month ahead of the time. When would I have identified the priorities of my September 28 release? I would have identified that on August 11th, a month earlier. So every time that I meet in the middle of the month, I want to ask them, tell me what do you want to be delivered on the next month's release. So for the September 28th release, I would have identified the same in August on August 11th. I hope this helps understand. And when I meet them on October 11th, again for business prioritization meeting, I'll ask them, tell me what do you want to be delivered on November 28th. So I want to work a month ahead to define the scope. Now my next question that I want you to answer. What is the name of the document that I use to define a scope of the release? What is it called? In what document do I define the scope?
Uh, Requirements document.
Perfect. Great answer. So remember I create, let me just ring a bell because some of you are sleeping. Remember this? The current business problem. This is the very first thing you do. And you define your business requirements. And that's what is defining the scope. So if you are in a waterfall approach, if you are in RUP approach, you are going to define a BRD to create the scope of your project, to define the scope of your project. In Agile, if you are in Agile, you are not using BRD to define the scope of your project. First of all, I want you to understand the difference. Are you able to understand what I'm trying to say? Do you understand exactly? Are we all on the same page? Does anyone have any confusion on what BRD is? If yes, please ask me because these are important concepts that you need to understand. Do we all understand what a BRD is and when it is created and defined? All right, so I take that as a yes. So now in Agile, we don't have any BRD. That's the first important difference between Waterfall, RUP, and Agile. In Waterfall and RUP, you define the scope of the project via a business requirements document. In Agile, there is no concept of creating a BRD. So then the next question is, how do you create a BRD? How do you define the scope? So normally when you are using an Agile, you normally tend to use a software or a project management tool. Examples of project management tools which are used in Agile, one is Jira, Jira. Another one that you see or that is very widely used here is called Rally, RALLY. So what I'm showing you here in this video is I'm showing you the software called Rally. And then today I'm going to help you go through another software called Jira so you can understand the difference. So any tool you use, whether it's Rally, whether it's Jira, or whether it's anything else, they have something known as a backlog, if you can see here on the screen. Backlog. So what does the word backlog mean? What does the word backlog mean?
Pending has been decided.
Pending. Backlog is my wish list. Pending is backlog is my to-dos. These are the things that needs to be done. So if I click on the backlog, what it will do is it will take you to the backlog bucket, which you see here. This is the backlog. And what you see here is these are all the to-dos that needs to be done, which has not yet been implemented. So help me answer this. Each of the item that you see here in backlog is equivalent to a dash displayed in the BRD. Each of the item that you see here in the backlog, each of the backlog item is equivalent to a dash that you see in the BRD. What is the dash? What is the answer? I'm all about making sure that you understand the concept. So it's very, very important that you are up, awake, and answer and understand.
Is that a solution?
See, the proposed solution is just a one-liner, right? It's not equivalent to this. Good try.
Are these questions which have been raised which you have to fix?
Sorry?
You have to fix items?
Fix items?
You
No,
have to
I want to talk with
I
respect.
don't understand the question, Mikul. Can you repeat your question?
So my question is, you understand the backlog, right? So what is a backlog? A backlog in Agile is, it's a list of to-dos that needs to be done. So I'm trying to help you understand that each item that you see here in the backlog, backlog is only for Agile. But for Waterfall and RUP, a comparable deliverable is a BRD, business requirements document. So what you see here in backlog, each item is similar or is equivalent to what part of your BRD? What is that part of your BRD which tells that this is what I need to do? What is the section of your BRD that says that this is what I need to do in
The requirements?
You see here the business requirements. It talks about what needs to be done, right? You take every business requirement, you go into a JAT session, and you then gather the real requirements. So that is the correct answer. Every line item that you have in your backlog could be equivalent to a business requirement in your BRD. I hope you all understand this concept. Okay. So now, what happens in the business prioritization meeting is, I open this backlog to the SMEs. And I ask the SMEs that, can you help me pick up 15 features from here that you want to be delivered on October 28. So this is a rule. Every month I'm going to select 15 features from the backlog to work in the next release. Now, why do I have 15? Why don't I have 12? Why don't I have 16? Just a random number that we agreed upon as a team. So there's no logical reason as to why 15. It's just based on the team's capacity that we have selected 15 as a number. So what is a homework that the SMEs would have done before coming into this meeting?
They would make a list of the features.
Perfect. They would have reviewed this backlog beforehand, and they would have made a list of features that they want next month. I'm going to take a slight detour. Who creates this backlog? Let's first talk about that. Who creates this backlog? Think about a logical answer, all right? For whom does it make the most sense to add an item here to the backlog?
The BA.
Wrong.
And the owner, I mean, the
System.
Yeah, no.
System
The
architect, bad answer.
The SME.
SMEs, right? Whose wish list is this? It is the wish list of the SMEs.
SMEs.
So anytime the SMEs they think that you know what, I need to make some change, the very first thing they do is they open the backlog and they add a line item to the backlog so that they don't forget. So the backlog could have 100, 200, 300, 400 items in there. But I as a PA, it really doesn't matter to me what's in the backlog. So when does it start mattering to me as a BA as to what is in the backlog? If there are 400 items in the backlog, trust me, I don't really care. And I don't even go through them and understand what's there in the backlog. When do you think it actually starts? When do you think it actually starts making sense to me from the backlog? What is it in the backlog? It only
SMEs pointed out.
exactly. I only start taking it seriously the moment SME says that out of this 300 items, these are the 15 features that I want delivered next month. Good? Make sense? So what I do is they'll come with a number saying, you know what, I want US 31032. So what I do is I do a control F, I type in that number, I type in US 31032. I'm just showing you here. Just be patient for a minute or so. So the SMEs will say, I want US 31032. So anytime you want to find something, there is something known as a control F feature. So when you do a control F and you type in US 3032, it highlights that particular item. And when you click on that, what it does is it opens up that particular feature. Now look at that. It says apply promo code via laptop. This is something that they want to do. Now everything is blank. Why do you think it's blank? Why do you think it is blank?
I guess they don't know yet what to do.
Correct. The reason it's blank is we have not yet gathered the requirements. You see in your BRD, it's just a one-liner item. There are no details to that because I'm yet to gather the requirements. So it has to be blank. Now you look at here, release. It says unscheduled. Why does it say unscheduled?
There are no requirements or it's not prioritized.
Wrong. Why does the release say unscheduled? It is very simple.
They don't have
Because the reason it is unscheduled is it was in the backlog. Anything which is in the backlog has no release assigned to it. Hence, it's in the backlog. So if I open the drop down, what would be my release schedule? What would be my options here? What would I see?
September 28th. Okay.
Perfect. Perfect. So if I would have opened the drop down, I would see the options of September 28, October 28, November 28. So now for this particular item, I want to select the option of October 28. So when I do that, what will this tool do is it will remove this item from the backlog and it will shift it to the bucket of October 28 release. So at the end of this business prioritization meeting, what will I have is I will have 15 less items in my backlog and I will have 15 new items added to the folder of October 28 release. Are we on the same page? Do you all understand this concept? Take that
you
as
just go
Sure. So what I do is the SME says they want US 31032 to be implemented on October 28. So currently the release is unscheduled because this is in the backlog. So when I open the drop down, I'll select the option of October 28. So what we'll then do is it will move this US 31032 from the backlog, and it will move this to the folder of October 28 release. This is just one item. Like this, SMEs will give me 14 more items because I need 15. So at the end of this meeting that I have, I will move 15 items from my backlog to the October 28 folder. So now my backlog will have 15 less items, and my October 28 folder will have 15 new items added to that. Does that answer your question, Victor? Do you understand that?
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Another thing that I want to do as a part of the business prioritization meeting is I want to do a ranking on those 15 features that I have gathered. What does ranking mean?
Prioritizing.
I want to do a prioritization. So I know that we are delivering 15, right? But I want to make sure that what is the highest priority to what is the lowest priority. So I arrange those 15 items from the highest priority to the lowest priority. So that's another thing I do as a part of the business prioritization meeting. So you know what it is? It is 11:41. Let's do this. Let's take a break for 10 minutes. We'll restart at 11:51, and I'm going to carry on from where I am here.
How
Sabu?
long? How long
10.
is it today, Mithun? When do we finish?
I think we'll go until 2 o'clock or so today. It's a little bit of a longer session.
Thank you.
Okay,
I
so
have
it's
one
11.
question. I have one
Yes.
question.
Yes.
Uh, the software that you showed, where you were making a list of all the like the backlog software for Agile.
Yes. Rally and Jira.
What is it called?
There are two commonly used software. One that you see here is called Jira, Jira,
Okay.
and the other one that I was showing you is called Rally, Rally.
So this will be provided by the company, right? Like
Yes,
it's already.
every software that you use is provided by the company. You don't have to pay any of your softwares.
And this is the most commonly used two softwares, or
Yeah.
these are the only two
Yeah,
software?
yeah. These are the two most commonly used softwares. But again, there are some other companies, right? They may use some other software, but they all work on the same principles. They do. It's just like driving a Honda or a Toyota. They work exactly the same way.
Oh, okay, okay. I see. I see. Okay.
All right. Any other questions before we go for a break? All right. So please keep yourself unmuted. It's 11:43. We'll restart in 10 minutes. So we'll restart at 11:53. Thank you. All right. So, taking back from where we were, so we have a monthly release. Every month, 28th, we release. My new release starts on 2nd, ends on 28th. What I do on a monthly basis is I conduct a business prioritization meeting with my SMEs. And what I do in this meeting is I ask them to prioritize the features they want to be delivered next month. And then I also do a ranking on them based on the highest priority to the lowest priority. So now, after 11th, how many more days I have left in this release? So I have 2 days here, 12th, 13th, 5 more days here, another 5 more days here, and then I have my release. So I have 12 more days remaining in this release. So during this period, which is highlighted in green here, my developers and my testers are working on coding and testing the features to be delivered on what date? What's an answer?
20.
Yes, but 28th of what? September or October or November?
September.
So during this period that you see here, my developers, my testers, my DBA are actively working on the features that needs to be delivered on 28th of September. What do you think I would be doing as a BA during this period?
Working on the next
Meeting.
month.
Yeah.
Sorry?
We're working on the next month's of October's the requirements, the business requirement that we gather.
Perfect. So on the 11th, SMEs told me what are the 15 features they want. So for all those 15 features, during this period, I'm going to gather my requirements. I'll conduct my requirement gathering sessions. So I'll conduct those JAT sessions with my SMEs for those 15 features. And I'll make sure that I have those requirements, and I also have my requirements documented. So I want to ensure that before my new release begins, my requirements are documented. So if it is a waterfall or if it is RUP, what is the name of my requirements document that I create? It could have two potential names. What are those two names? My requirement document could be called dash or dash if it's waterfall or RUP. What's the answer?
BRD.
Sorry?
BRD. No.
Please don't disappoint me.
User required document.
What? See, it's all about understanding the concept, okay? So I really want you to understand this and don't just talk what comes to mind. What is BRD? Is it the BRD, my final requirements document? No, it's the first document which just tells me what needs to be done.
Oh, final. Okay, okay, okay. I understand.
So out of my BRD, I go into my chat session and then I gather my requirements and then I create this or that. What are those two documents that we've learned until now? You should be able to answer this by now.
It's FRD or use case.
Perfect. So you either end up creating FRD or you either end up creating a use case. However, in Agile, We don't create FRDs or we don't create use cases. So in Agile, we write our requirements in the form of a user story. So I would have created user stories at the end here. So let's assume that if there are 15 features, I may have created 15 user stories, one for each feature. User story, I'm writing it here. So two things you need to understand, right? Let me just write here. Waterfall and RUP, Agile. And over here, I'm going to say, I'm looking for a better word, so name of let me first write and then I'll come up with a better name, I assume. So over here, define scope of project. So if you want to define the scope of a project, you create BRD if it's waterfall or RUP. In Agile, it is product backlog. Requirements document name, it could be FRD or use case. If it's Agile, it is called a user story. This is as detailed as I can go to help you understand the concept. Any questions? What I wrote here, does this make sense? All right, I assume yes. So the ask is, by the end of this, on 28th, when when I do a release of September, all my user stories that needs to be delivered on 28th is ready.
Do you have that page again? The one you had before.
Yes. Here we go. Write it down. Let me know once you're done.
Okay, done.
All right. So now we assume that the September release is done, everything is good. Now I want to concentrate on the October release. The first day of a release, the very first thing that needs to be done is now before I go into the actual working of the Agile, let me just give you some background to some theoretical knowledge that you need to know for Agile. and then we are going to resume how the actual release cycle will work. So whenever we talk of Agile is a framework, and it has different approaches. So there are different approaches to the Agile framework. So there are a couple of frameworks. The first framework is known as a Scrum approach. The second approach is known as a SAFe approach. Third approach is known as a Kanban approach. Fourth approach is known as extreme programming. And there could be few other. So the most common is the Scrum approach. And we are going to be talking about the Scrum approach for the training because that's what I have worked on and that's what is widely used in the industry. So it's called an Agile Scrum approach. So now let us understand the Scrum team. So the Agile Scrum team. So who are a part of the Agile Scrum team? The very first role, CRUM, Scrum. The very first role is known as a Scrum Master. So let's write down what does the Scrum Master do. So the Scrum Master is responsible for promoting and supporting Scrum as defined in the Scrum Guide. So there is a Scrum Guide which describes all the good practices. Scrum Masters do this. Scrum Masters do this by helping everyone understand. Scrum Masters do this by helping everyone understand Scrum theory, practices, rules, and values.
Line?
But Yeah, so Scrum Masters do this by helping everyone understand Scrum theory, practices, rules, and values. Another important thing that you may want to write is the Scrum Master is a servant dash leader for the Scrum team. That's what they're called. They're called as servant leaders. Another thing which may not be important, but you should just write it down for your understanding is the Scrum Master helps those, the Scrum Master helps those outside the Scrum team understand which of their interactions with the Scrum team are helpful and which aren't. So that's a Scrum Master. I'll make you write all the roles and then maybe you can ask me questions if any. The second is known as the product owner. The product owner is the sole person, the product owner is the sole person responsible for managing the product backlog. Product backlog management includes and we can have a couple of bullet points. The first bullet point is clearly expressing product backlog items. Clearly expressing product backlog items. Ordering the items in the product backlog. Ordering the items in the product backlog to best achieve goals and missions.
Mitul, can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, so what was I making you write was ordering the items in the product backlog to best achieve goals and missions. So that's a product owner. So they are the ones who are responsible for the requirements. So sometimes or many times BAs play the role of product owner in the team. And the third role is known as the development team. So let's write down about this. The development team consists of professionals who do the work of delivering the product. Development teams are cross-functional. Development teams are cross-functional with all the skills as a team, with all the skills as a team necessary to create a product. We can say to deliver a product. And one important line that you may want to write is Scrum recognizes Scrum recognizes no subteams sub dash teams. Scrum recognizes no subteams in the development team.
So can you repeat that line?
Sure. Scrum recognizes no subteams subteams. Scrum recognizes no subteams in the development team.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? So in parentheses you can say example system architect, developer, QA, DBA, are all referred as the development team. So no matter what you do, if you're an architect, if you're a QA, you are a DBA, you are a developer, you still are referred as the development team. So these are the three roles in the Agile Scrum team: Scrum Master, Product Owner, and the development team. Any questions? All right. So going back to the example with some more knowledge of Agile Scrum. So let's say we finished 28th of September. I'm done with my release of 28th of September. My new release starts on the 2nd, right? So that's when I start up a new release. So on the first day of a new release, two things happen. The first thing that happens on the first day of a new release is, and I'm going to make you write everything that I'm teaching. So don't worry about script. You can take your own notes, that's fine, but you're not going to be left behind. I'm going to make you write everything that I'm teaching. So on this day, which is the first day of the sprint, what's going to happen is the first meeting that happens is known as a retrospective meeting. What does the word, what does the word retrospective mean? Anyone?
Reflect on stuff.
Sorry?
Kind of reflect what you're doing.
Yes. Rather than reflect on what you're doing, it's retrospect. So you reflect on what you have done. Let's
Yeah, that's
retrospect
what I mean.
what you've done. So when I'm doing a retrospective meeting on the 2nd of October, what do I have what do I have that I can retrospect on?
To what you've done in the last cycle to see how it is, how it's working.
Perfect. So on the first day of a new release, I'm going to do a retrospective on my previous month as to what are the things we did well, what are the things we did not do well, and how can we overcome the shortcomings. So let us write this down. Retrospective meetings retrospective meetings are conducted by a scrum master on the first day of a new release. And the goal is to do the following. And the goal is to do the following. We'll have 2 bullet points. So in the first bullet point, we'll write identify the things, identify the things that we did well in the previous release. Identify the things that we did well in the previous release. And the goal is to repeat them in this release. Next point. Identify the things that we did not do well in the previous release. And the goal is to identify action items. And the goal is to identify action items to resolve them in this release. All right, so that's what the Scrum Master does on the first day of a new release. After that, on the first day of a new release, the business analyst or the product owner, if you use the agile terms, conducts a sprint planning meeting. Let me just remove this word. How many work week do I have here in this release? I have 4 work weeks. This is, but what I am referring is, I'm referring this 2 weeks, as sprint 1, and I'm referring these 2 weeks as sprint 2. So if I help you understand what is a sprint, the definition is a sprint is a time period within which I execute my entire SDLC.
Can you please repeat it?
Sprint is a time period within which I execute my entire SDLC. So if I have a monthly release, I have two sprints. Sprint 1, which starts from the 2nd to 13th. Sprint 2, which starts from 16th to 27th. So on the first day of a new release, which is my Sprint 1, the Scrum Master conducts a retrospective meeting. And after that retrospective meeting is conducted, what does the business analyst product owner do? They conduct the Sprint 1 planning meeting. So what do you think is a planning meeting, sprint planning meeting? What does the name suggest?
Would be something like what's gonna be part of the net release.
Sorry?
It would be like a meeting with the SMEs to determine what's gonna be the part of the net release.
No, SMEs are not a part of this anymore.
You
When you say what's part of wait. So when you say what's part of next release is always done on 11th, right? It's the middle of each month. It's called the business prioritization meeting. So please don't confuse the two. All right, so
Sprint one
Neha,
planning, sprint one planning meeting would be for what is going to be done for sprint two.
no. Do you have?
What the deliverables are gonna be?
Sorry?
What the deliverables are gonna be in that week, and then what the deliverables are gonna be in the next week?
Correct. So rather than saying this week and next week, we'll use the word sprint. So if I'm doing the planning for sprint 1, I want to identify what are we delivering? What are the goals of sprint 1? What am I delivering in this sprint, in this cycle? How many stories do I need to deliver on 28? I need to deliver 15 stories that I already have created. So out of these 15 stories, in my sprint 1, I'm going to take 8 highest priority stories. And what I do in this planning meeting is I have the Scrum Master with me and I have the development team with me in the planning meeting. So I conduct a planning meeting with the Scrum Master and the development team. And what I do in this planning meeting is I open one by one all the 8 user stories that I want to be delivered on in sprint 1, which is the end of sprint 1, which is 13th of October. So I open the first user story. I explain them what the requirements is, what the ask is. If they have any questions, they're going to ask me the questions. And then one more thing I'm going to be doing is I'll assign resources as to who is the developer that will work, who is the tester that will work on this user story. And one more thing I do in this is I also assign story points as a part of this meeting. So let us write down the definition of story points. Story points are estimates. Story points are estimates provided by the development team Story points are estimates provided by the development team which reflects which reflects the level of effort, which reflects the level of effort that would be required, that would be required that would be required to deliver the user story.
Can you please repeat the last line?
Which reflects the amount of effort which reflects the amount of effort required to deliver the user story. Story points are given using Fibonacci sequence. Here's the spelling. Story points are given using Fibonacci sequence. It's Fibonacci, Fibonacci sequence. Story points are given using Fibonacci sequence. Does anyone know what is a Fibonacci sequence? All right, so the first number is 1, the second number is 2. Now the third number is in this sequence is always the sum of the previous two numbers. So the next in sequence is 3. Now the next in sequence is always a sum of the previous two numbers. So 5. The next will be the sum of 5 and 3, 8. Then the next is 8 plus 5, 13, and so on. So this is a Fibonacci sequence. So story points are given using Fibonacci sequence. And then you want to say story points range from 1 to 13. So you can just write down the entire range. Story point range 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. This is the range of story points. These are the different numbers that you can use as story points. With one being lowest effort and 13 being the highest effort. All right. So in this planning meeting, you open every user story, you explain them what the story is, and then you ask for what's the story point for that. They'll give you a number. They'll say it's a number 3 for me. It's a number 4 for me. So there's no number 4. It's number 3, number 5. So whatever number they say, you plug that in the user story. I'm going to show you how to add all this in the tool. But just to show you quickly, if it's rally, there's something called plan estimate. You just plug in the number here. And that's what reflects the story point number. Now, why do we use story points? So basically what happens is that so let's say you are having 8 user stories. So I'm just going to write here user story number story point. So there are 8 user stories, right? So I'm just going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So let's say the first user story has a story point of 2, another story has a story point of 1, has a story point of 3, 3, 5, 5, 2, 5. So these are the total story points for each user story. So what you do is you do a sum of all the user story numbers, story points, and your total story point is 26. So basically every team will have a rule that in any given sprint, we at least need to deliver story points amount of work which is equivalent to 20 or more story points. So your total number is 26. So you can say that your team is sufficient, your team is working at a max capacity for this sprint. We refer it as a velocity. This is referred as the sprint velocity, or we also refer it as the velocity of the team. So this is just a way for project management to see how busy your team is. That's about it. Nothing beyond that. All right, so going back to where we were. So on the first day of the sprint, and if it is your sprint 1, you're going to do a retrospective meeting, you're going to do planning meeting. You'll assign story points in the planning meeting. Then from Monday to Friday, what will happen is the developers are going to do the coding they are going to finish the coding for all those 8 user stories. And from next week, Monday to Friday, what will happen?
Testing.
The testers are going to test those 8 user stories. So on Friday, which is 13th, all those 8 user stories would be coded and they would be tested. But are you going to release them on 13th?
QA after that.
No, so testing is QA, right? 9 to 13 is what you're. So from 2 to 6, you're going to code. From 9 to 13, you're going to test, which is QA. So on 13th, all the stories are completed QA. They are in a done status, DONE. So once they are in a done status, do we deploy them on 13 or do we wait?
We wait cycle.
I'm going to wait until the 28th because that's when my release is. So although they are complete, I'm going to be waiting until 28th when I release everything together. So on the last day of the sprint, I do a meeting which is known as a sprint review meeting, also referred as a demo. So on the last day of the sprint, I conduct another meeting, which is known as a sprint review meeting or a demo meeting. So what happens in this meeting is I call in the SMEs. And I demo them the 8 user stories in my test environment. I open my test environment. I show them that this is how the system is functioning with this 8 user stories. I show them live. So I do a review or a demo of the sprint's work with the SMEs. So now my sprint 1 is complete. Another thing that I want to bring to your attention is what am I doing on 11th?
Business prioritization meeting.
Correct. I'm going to do a business prioritization meeting for the month of November. Now, what do I do on this day?
Sprint 2 planning meeting.
Am I doing a retrospective?
Yes.
No.
Sprint 2 planning.
I'm not doing a retrospective because my retrospective is done for the entire release.
Okay.
It's not done for a specific sprint. So I'm only going to do planning. My retrospective is only on the first day of a new release. So on this day, I'm going to be doing sprint. I should write here sprint 1 review demo. So I'm going to do sprint 2 planning meeting. Ideally on the 27th, I would have done sprint 2 review or demo. But now what I want to do instead is I want to do UAT here. I'll call the SMEs, and rather than a review or a demo, I have all the 15 stories done. So I'll ask them, why don't you test yourself? Why don't you try yourself and see whether is this something that you like, the experience of using it? And then if everything goes right, on 28th, I do a release. And then I repeat the same cycle again. So this is a complete Agile Scrum approach. Another feature of an Agile Scrum is on a daily basis, the Scrum Master conducts a Scrum meeting. It's like a 15-minute meeting, which is conducted on a daily basis. And who all are present? It's the product owner in there and the development team is there. So this is like a 15-minute meeting wherein the Scrum Master does a roll call. So the Scrum Master roll calls everyone's name. When your name is asked, you tell the Scrum Master and the team what you did yesterday, what you plan to do today, and you can identify any roadblocks, if any. Another feature of Agile is for every release, you as a BA or a product owner would end up writing release notes. Anyone has an idea what release notes is?
It's basically like telling what the new features are.
Exactly. I'm just showing you something. All right. So I'm showing an example of a new software that is released for Apple, right? So this update includes bug fixes for your phone. It fixes an issue that could do this. It addresses this. It does this. So you are trying to summarize what features are you introducing for that release. So in other words, it's nothing but a summary of your user stories. That's release notes. So this is as detailed as one can go in Agile Scrum, and this is everything that I know that I've communicated to you. Any questions on the process?
So on the release note, can we
Sorry?
start those before the release?
Yeah, you can pretty much start working on the release notes, but then it only gets finalized on this day because when you're working on the 15 user stories, which I'm going to talk about in few minutes, it's not that all the 15 will get delivered. There may be some issues and you're only able to deliver 13. So your release notes will only have a summary of those 13 stories, which will get finalized by the last day of the release. So I'm going to talk about some exceptions, but yes, you can parallelly start working on the release notes and not just work on this day. But that's released on the release day. So your release notes will only be out on this. Worked on them prior and have them ready. Got it?
Yep, thank you.
All right. So now, in the interview, one of the questions they ask is, "What is your knowledge on Agile?" So let's write down the question. What is your knowledge or experience on Agile? Right? A question. So I'm going to make you write this answer. Now this is a one long answer. So if you write this answer as one big paragraph, it will be gigantic. And then when you start reading this and try to memorize, it'll get difficult for you to do so. So I'm going to break the answer in logical points. So every time I ask you that it's a new point, I want you to go to a next line in your notes and write it as a separate line item so you can easily memorize it. So let's write down the answer. I am familiar with I'm familiar with Agile Scrum approach. I am familiar with an Agile Scrum approach, which would typically have a release which would typically have a release on a monthly basis. A typical sprint would consist of two a typical sprint would consist of 2 work weeks. A typical sprint would consist of 2 work week 2 work weeks which would make the release consisting of 2 sprints.
Which would make
The release consisting of 2 sprints. So I'm trying to say, right, that every sprint has 2 weeks in them. So if I have a monthly release, it will have 4 weeks, so I'll have 2 sprints in a release. I would attend Scrum meetings on a daily basis. I would attend Scrum meetings on a daily basis to provide a status update of what I did yesterday of what I did yesterday what I plan to do today and identify roadblocks. If any. Next point. On the first day of a new release, on the first day of a new release, I would attend a retrospective meeting to identify the things that we did well in the previous release, to identify the things that we did well in the previous release, comma, the things we did not do well in the previous release, and identify action items and identify action items to resolve them in this release.
And identify action items too.
Resolve them in this release. Next point. On the first day of a new sprint, now while you write this, I don't want you to be writing blindly. I want you to read what you're writing, because I'm exactly making you write things that I've been teaching for the past 2 hours. So if something doesn't ring a bell, the goal is to stop me and ask me a question. I think, my bad, before we go and write on the first day of sprint 1, I want to make you write one more thing. On a monthly basis, I would conduct business prioritization meeting on a monthly basis. I would conduct a business prioritization meeting with the SMEs to define the scope to define the scope of the upcoming release. Next point. On the first day of a sprint, on the first day of a sprint, I would conduct I would conduct a sprint planning meeting with the development team to review the user stories to review the user stories to be assigned review the user stories to be assigned for that sprint. Continuing further, I would also assign story points I would also assign story points to the user stories
Yes, sir.
I would also assign story points to the user stories based on the feedback of the development team. Next point. On last day of the sprint, on the last day of the sprint, I would conduct a sprint review meeting. I would conduct a sprint review meeting with the SMEs with the SMEs to review the user stories to review the user stories that were delivered to review user stories that were delivered for that sprint. Next point. I would conduct UT with the SMEs towards end of the last sprint of that release. And the last point, for every release, I would document release notes for every release. I would document release notes to provide a summary changes to be introduced for that release. So that's a complete answer to the knowledge you may have on Agile Scrum. Any questions I can answer? Anything that does not ring a bell? Any confusion?
I have a question. In the answer, we don't say sprint one or sprint two. I mean, the sprint is referred to both one and two,
Yeah, a sprint is a sprint, right? And
right?
the reason is it's a concept. Now, let me give you some variations in different companies. All right. Uh, there could be another company wherein they have a monthly release and they would have 4 sprints in a release. So, what does that mean? Giving you a scenario, there is a project where you have a monthly release and they have 4 sprints in a release. So, what
Every
does that
week
mean?
every week they have a sprint,
Exactly, right? So
right?
every week there is a sprint. So they would have sprint planning.
Every week.
So they would have sprint planning. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Here we go. So they would have sprint planning here. Then would have sprint review or a demo here, here, and here. And over here they'll have UAT. And somewhere here they'll have business prioritization meeting. Okay. I'll talk about another scenario. I have also worked in a company where one sprint was 3 weeks long and one release is 3 weeks long as well. So one sprint equals one release equals 3 weeks. And then you repeat. So you would have sprint planning and you simply have here either you can do a UAT or you can do a sprint review, whatever you want. Now, how often in this scenario would be my business prioritization meeting? How often would I do that?
Is it still one time?
But once every what?
Once every 3 weeks.
Perfect. So that's exactly the kind of concepts I want you to understand. So as long as you know what a sprint planning is, what a sprint retrospective is, what a sprint review is, what a business prioritization is, what is a sprint, when it could be done. Different companies, they have their own customized version of Agile Scrum, and you can just work accordingly as long as you know these concepts. So again, if we go back again to the theory part, right, of what Agile Scrum says, you just want to make a note of this so that you always remember this. It's again pretty theoretical, but something that you should know. Agile Scrum has 4 events. Agile Scrum has 4 events. And we want to write all the 4 events. So number 1, sprint planning. Number 2, daily Scrum. Number 3, sprint review. Number 4, sprint retrospective. All right. Questions?
Mithul, how much is the BA involved in testing to Agile?
Sorry?
As a BA, how much manual testing a BA would do in an Agile environment?
How much testing you would do?
Yeah.
Again, it depends on different companies, right? There's no XYZ rules. I've taught you testing, and you need to understand how you do the testing. Now, how much are you involved in? There's no right or wrong answer. It depends on the needs of the project where you work.
Okay, thank you.
So now let's talk about some scenarios that you may encounter while you work on Agile Scrum. So let's say in sprint 1, you were supposed to be working on 8 user stories, right? In sprint 1. For XYZ reason, you were only able to work or complete 6 user stories. So ideally, you had to work on 8 stories in sprint. In sprint 1, you were supposed to work on 1 to 8, and on sprint 2, you were supposed to work on 9 to 15 user stories. Are you all following me? So now, for XYZ reason, you were only able to complete completed user stories 1 to 6, not completed 7, 8. So now what happens with user stories 7 and 8?
Does it go into the backlog?
No, do not go back to the backlog. they get
Go to
they
the next.
get pushed they get pushed to
Sprint 2.
8 plus 9 to 15. Got it? So now, as a result of this, completed work in this, since they get pushed to sprint 2, completed work in sprint 2 is user stories 7 to 13. Not completed is 14 and 15. So now we are on Friday, this Friday, which is 27th. We've only completed 1 to 13 stories and not completed number 14 and number 15. And we have a release on the next day. What do we do now? Anyone?
We release it without those two and take it to the next cycle.
Perfect. So half answer is correct. So the stories that we have not yet delivered are 14 and 15. Are they high priority stories or they are low priority stories? My priority goes from number 1 to number 15, with 1 being the highest and 15th being the lowest. So for 14 and 15 are the lowest priority stories for October release. So what I do on this day is I update SMEs that we've only been able to complete 13 stories and we won't be able to deliver 14th and 15th story in this release. Now you ask the SMEs, what have we done on 11th of October on this day?
Prioritized for
For
November.
You've prioritized for the month of November. So now for the month of November, what I have is I have 1 to 15 stories that I have prioritized, plus I have 14 plus 15 from the month of October. Are you all following me? I have these two stories plus 1 to 15. I ask the SMEs is that I have 17 stories altogether for November. Can we do a reprioritization in this? So what would happen is something which was of a low priority may become a high priority for the month of November. So out of 17, I want to keep 2 stories back into the backlog, and I still only want to keep 15 stories that I have as a deliverable for the month of November. So I'll again do a reprioritization of those 17 user stories and maybe keep 2 and maybe put 2 user stories back to the backlog. Are you understanding the scenario? I assume yes. Now let us take another scenario that the user stories in sprint 1 earlier we had not completed number 7 and number 8. Now let us assume that we completed stories 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, and the stories that I did not complete was number 3 and number 4 priority. So then I push to sprint 2 user stories 3, 4 plus 3 plus 4 plus 9 to 15. Now I completed user stories 9 to 15 but could not complete priority 3 and 4. What do I do now? So I again do the same process. I let the SMEs know that we have not completed stories 3 and 4. So now for the month of November, I have 1 to 15 plus from October user stories 3 and 4. SMEs are okay with us not delivering 3 and 4 in the month of October, we'll reprioritize them and only have 15 stories for the month of November and put 2 stories back into the backlog. But for some XYZ reason, SMEs say that, you know what, I don't think I'm going to be able to wait for one more month before I receive the stories 3 and 4. I need them ASAP. I cannot wait. And what do you do in that scenario is you still carry on and you still do a release of October, but then you have 1 or 2 or 3 people working on finishing user stories 3 and 4 in the first sprint of November. Because they really don't want to wait until 28th. They want that sooner. So let's say you finished delivering user stories 3 and 4 on 5th of November. What are you going to do is you're going to do another release to deliver user stories 3 and 4. And your other team members are working on the user stories for the November release. But you'll do another release. You already had a release on 28. Your regular release is 28th of each month. But now you're doing another release on top of the 28 release to deliver the work that you did not complete before. This is known as a patch. This is known as a patch. So let us write down this. A patch is referred to a release a patch is referred to a release which delivers high priority uncompleted work from the previous release. So that is known as a patch. Now, let us say you are working on this October release, and on 10th of October, in your production environment, let's say you're working for Bank of America. So on 10th of October, suddenly in the production environment, when somebody enters the password, they're able to see the entire password. Something went wrong, and the password is getting displayed and is not getting encrypted. So something blew off, something went wrong in your production environment on 10th of October. So somebody has to resolve that defect. Now, do you wait until 28th to release that solution for the defect, or you have to deliver that immediately? What's your answer?
Immediately.
You cannot wait, right? So you have to do another release to deliver that solution. And you cannot wait until the regular release cycle. So such a scenario, the release is referred as a hotfix, HOTFIX, hotfix. So let's write down. A hotfix is referred to a release a hotfix is referred to a release which delivers a fix which delivers a fix, FIX, to a critical defect. Which delivers a fix to a critical defect that occurred in production. All right, any questions? All right, I assume no questions.